Are you someone who has a hard time saying no to people, so much so that it's at the expense of yourself? You overcommit and it's keeping you in a body you hate? Welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how to stop people pleasing once and for all and how to start prioritizing yourself. So if you're ready, listen up and lean in as we elevate your mind.
I'm so glad that we have this episode scheduled because
let's talk about Amanda's weekend.
My weekend was wrecked from watching Love is Blind. I gave in. I did it. I said no, and then I said okay, and then I kept going, and I don't even know where my life went.
Correct. She was people pleasing me, and then she is now people pleasing Love is Blind so that they can keep money in their pockets.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about Love is Blind. If you want to skip to the actual part of the episode that's going to help you, check out the show notes for timestamps below.
Yeah, we're upgrading, baby.
Yeah, baby. Yeah. So, first things first, before we get into it.
Okay.
I want to know about your experience overall.
I'm so shameful. Like, I feel like I should have like a brown bag over my head for watching 13 hours or however many episodes of Love is Blind this week.
It's addicting. You can see why. I said it's addicting.
Oh, yes, it's addicting. So in the beginning, I was like, I don't understand this. This is stupid. And this is why I don't watch reality shows. And then it was like, wait a second, what? And then when they were all like, oh my God, and then it became like a lot of love bombing with everybody, like where they just talked about, I love you. Oh my gosh, I love you. Oh my gosh, you love me. I love you. Like where sometimes I would fast forward because I was like, we get it. Y'all love each other. And then I was like, hold up. And then when they would start talking about like, I can't believe it's been 9 days. And I was like, oh my God, it's only been 9 days.
But
and so
like hours and hours of talking.
I guess. I mean, golly. So I was like, oh my gosh. And then I was like, oh, that's the jeweler guy.
That's him.
Like, yeah. And so when he was like, I don't want a girl with money, but I've got money. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this guy. Like, oh.
Yeah. Do you believe in the process of this experiment?
I guess so. Yes, I think. I'm trying to I texted Michael because he was out of town and when I was watching it, thank goodness. And I know he would like murder me. And so I was like, if we didn't see each other and we just were like in these hidden doors, do you think we'd still be together? He was like, of course. And I was like, okay.
Aww.
I know, of course.
I think about that with Mark because I remember obviously he's attractive. So that like kind of kept me there and interested in the conversation. And if I didn't see him, it would have still kept me there for the conversation because the conversation is really what caused me to like, be like, oh, I want to talk to this person again. Yeah. And with them, that's all they're doing.
I know.
All day long. And then
they don't even disclose everything though. Cause that was like,
oh yeah, that's not normal.
Okay.
Usually it's like, everything by the time you're leaving this bitch.
Oh,
but
really?
That was not normal. Yeah, no, that's never happened.
Because I was also I feel like this should have been disclosed, like if they were so in love.
Right. Well, there are some people who come on for, as they say, the wrong intentions to like be Insta famous. So that is a thing. Like one guy last season, he had like a girlfriend.
Oh.
Yeah. Like he was like, yeah, after I'm done with this, I'm going to come back to you. Like she knew about it, but then she started like posting that he sent her the stuff and he was an idiot. So yeah. Okay. So that is that.
Wait,
what about
I have questions though?
Okay. Go questions.
Not necessarily people like going through them. So they're in the same city, correct? Like they all happen to just live like around Washington, D.C. or whatever city.
They do it per city.
Okay.
Like it's always, yeah.
Because that was a concern. Because I was like
Austin, Charlotte.
Okay. That makes sense.
I don't remember the other ones.
Then what do they do between going to the house and Cabo? Like, can they talk? Or is it like, hey, we've left the house, we're engaged, and now we're going to meet in Cabo and I don't talk to you? Really?
That's it.
Okay.
I'm not sure for the people who get engaged early on. So like Taylor and Garrett, they got engaged 9 days in,
They did
and
get
some other
engaged,
people got engaged 2 weeks in. I don't know if that means they get to like, they just stay there or they keep talking. They've never actually shown that part.
Okay, because I was wondering about that. Okay, and then that's all I got because the rest of my notes are about the peoples.
Okay. So this episode is about people pleasing. Do we want to start there? Or do you want to start with people who are not people pleasers?
Let's start with people who are not people pleasing.
Okay, go.
Okay, so Leo and Brittany, because I was like, well, first of all, okay, let's backtrack. Leo, Hannah, and Brittany, because then when he was like berating Hannah,
I know.
I was like, okay, red flag. Also,
Yeah.
like, and he's like trying to play two sides of the coin there, and then for Brittany to like be bawling her eyes out and then be like, okay, yeah, let's get engaged. Like,
it was so fake.
I was like, this girl. And then when they met, I was like, oh, that did not like. She probably
was like, she was like, what? She got the ick instantly.
She got the ick. And then I also didn't know the ick was a thing. I saw that in another show where they were talking about the ick, but these people kept talking about the ick, and I was like, oh, I'm so out of touch. Then there was who else was there? The Hannah and what's his name?
Nick.
Is that his name?
D.
Nick D. Nick D. I'm like, I don't think they like each other. Like
in Mexico?
Yeah, just in general. They just don't seem to get along very well at all.
Did you watch the at-home part with him?
I finished it. I'm full send.
So I think Hannah, number one, is very much the opposite of a people pleaser. So when we think of people pleasing, that usually falls into the category of someone who has a low self-esteem. But the opposite ego state, as I've talked about on this podcast, is better than, right?
Oh.
And she's very much like, I know everything. It's my way or the highway. Like, I'm not necessarily open. And she says that. She says, I need to be okay with people having, she doesn't say it this way, but like difference of opinion. But in all reality, a lot of her icks, if you will, are the fact that she's younger than him. She's established and he still lives at home. He doesn't know how much water to put in a pasta pot.
Right.
But because she's not working at the time because she quit her job to be on the show, he also uses that against her. So she very much, I think, is like, you need to do things, like she's very like, you need to do it my way. You need to look my way. You need to act my way and this. So there's that part. But then there is this like functional adult part about her that says, but also like, you should know some of these things. Like the investments thing, I don't know about investments. I do a little bit, but it's not.
Yeah, but when he was like, when she was talking about his insurance and paying for his phone and all that, I was like, dear God, man, like, where he's like, I don't know, as long as my parents want to pay for it. It's like, okay, I don't know. And they're like, he's so sweet. He's only really dated 2 people. I'm like, has he only dated 2 people because like this is his reality, or because he's chosen to date 2 people? Right. That's a big difference.
No, I don't think they like each other.
No.
Also, have you seen her lately?
No.
She's lost a significant. She looks like a different person.
Oh gosh.
I think everyone's like, Ozempic.
Is blind. Okay, so I'm on a deep meet Hannah Giles. So now I gotta go into
put weight loss. Just go Hannah Giles weight loss.
Okay, Hannah Giles weight loss. Hannah Giles weight loss. Because she had already lost weight going into, because so I thought from a different mental place, I was like, man, she's insecure because all she talks about is like these other, like when he goes and talks to these other girls, like that one lady where he was riding the duck thing with, it's like, she's like 50, like, right. Come on, like, let it go.
Well, we have to remember too, is that those ego states, better than and less than, we can swing between them.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So I need to have I need to do a thing on codependency to explain this.
Yes.
But yeah, we can feel very insecure about ourselves, but our like secondary ego state is to be like, no, you're the problem. You need to change. I'm fine. I'm perfect. My reality is perfect. She lost a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Probably like, what do you think? 40 more pounds?
I would say 50 plus.
Yeah.
I mean, not that
But-
that's a bad thing, but also,
Yeah. Anyway, so I don't think they'll end up going to the altar.
No.
So most people have to go to the altar. I heard that there's like a fine if you don't go to the altar, but obviously like we haven't seen what happens between Tyler and Ashley, where he's like,
okay. So I'm glad you got. Did you see my Reddit thread that I sent you?
I haven't read it, but
my gosh.
because Ira read it in my mail.
Okay. So I just want everybody to know that I'm watching the show and I immediately get on Reddit to like verify what the hell I am watching, because I'll say Netflix, whether this is intentional or not, doesn't do a good job of like talking about what is actually happening. Like they just cut to like a fight and you're like, wait, what the fuck just happened? So if you read this, apparently Tyler, I know. So Tyler had a baby mama, and that baby mama was with another partner, and they were the same sex couple. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he was with some other chick and they were engaged, and he donated his sperm to the same sex couple, but then started getting involved with their kids. And then one of the females in the same sex couple did not like that. And then the engagement girl of Tyler found out at the baby shower that those were his kids. And then, so they broke up. And so then he moved in with the original baby mama, because the original baby mama and the other partner got separated and she gave up custody of the kids. Mm-hmm. So then here he is on this show, and all of a sudden he has 3 kids. So I was like, wait, what? That is a lot more than just being a sperm donor, sir.
Yeah. So let me read this to you guys. So Tyler, after 5 years of dating, proposes to his ex-fiance.
Uh-huh.
Tyler, the baby mama's ex-wife, and the ex-fiance are all friends at this point. The baby mama and her ex-wife are married and want to have kids. Tyler is used as a sperm donor. At this point, we don't know how it's conceived, and all 3 are sworn to secrecy. Baby mama and ex-wife have a baby shower. Tyler and his fiance at the time are in attendance. Somehow at the baby shower, the fiance comes to know that Tyler is the father and she has been lied to this whole time. They then break up. In the agreement between the 3, it was agreed Tyler would have no fatherly role. Baby is born. Baby mama and baby mama wife are listed on the birth certificate. Baby mama wife finds out that Tyler has been actively involved with the kid without her knowledge. How is that possible?
See, thank you.
Where are you at? This doesn't sound like maybe you should have shown up more so that he didn't have to. Anyway, baby mama and her ex-wife separate. Tyler continues to be an active father against the ex-fiance now, or ex-wife's wishes. Baby mama takes her ex-wife to court to have her parental rights terminated. Tyler comes out and says he has been an active father the whole time. Ex-wife becomes stressed and overwhelmed at the court process and decides to terminate her parental rights. Tyler and baby mama move in together. During this living together, the twins are conceived before kid number 1 is 1 year old. Tyler is consistent presence in the kid's life until Tyler goes on the show, allegedly to make his kids' lives better, according to the comment by his baby mama. Now, all we know is that he disappeared from his kid's life, owes $30,000 in child support, allegedly. Notes all information coming from Storytime with 3 Kill
I don't know,
on TikTok. 3 Key.
And posts by the baby mama and baby mama's mom.
Baby's mama.
Yeah.
Baby mama.
So I was like, wow. When I got into that, I know. And then Marissa's mom, I was like, oh my God, calm down. But then with Ramesis, whatever his name is, with him like not wearing a condom, I was like, dear God, like, again, people, you can only get pregnant 3 to 5 days out of the month. Like, surely you can put a condom on for 3 to 5 days. So,
right. It doesn't have to be all the time.
Right. And that's why I was like, why is this like even a fight? Like, it just like seems like
a lack of knowledge.
Correct. So there was
I
that.
love Marissa. I would
Do
hang out
you?
with
I
her.
cannot stand her.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Why?
I don't know. I think she's just too happy.
Too cheerful for you?
Yeah, I think she's too
Makes
like
sense.
happy about everything. But I thought
Yeah.
I thought it
I
would
love people like her.
I thought her perspective on the military was very interesting. So I appreciated that because, she's like, I feel a lot of guilt about, the things I've done. And she goes, but I proudly served. And I was like, oh, I'm happy that she's sharing that. And like that Netflix included that because I think it's really important that like, you can say like, hey, I'm really proud, but I don't appreciate what we're doing in these other countries. And it was a really hard thing for me to grapple with. So I was
Which
like,
is
oh, that's
interesting
cool.
because with I don't remember his name, Brody or the guy she was.
The Ukrainian dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he
Bodhi.
Ukrainian? Bodhi?
Well,
Yeah.
he went and fought in Ukraine or something. And I was like, oh God.
Oh yeah, but he's American. Yeah, but he
Yes.
went and fought. Like he understood that. I think
Yes.
that would have been a better match. So
Well, that's why I'm curious for what this party that they keep alluding to.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So that's that.
What
Then
else?
so Steven and Monica. I liked them. I thought they were great. But when they got in person, I was like, something's weird. Because they were fine in the pods. I thought, like, overall. Now again, I fast forward through some of it because it was just like them love bombing each other. But once they got in real person, I was like, this is odd. Like he just keeps saying, like, I'm sorry, you're right. Absolutely, I will do that. Absolutely.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
And
I
then
literally said that to Mark. I go, he keeps saying you're right.
well, and I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like maybe even if she's right, like she doesn't need to hear she's right like 20 times.
Well, and also you don't have to say that if you don't feel that way.
Right.
Which is a people pleasing behavior.
See? And so then I thought this is where I was like, ooh, people pleasing. When they had like the party in Cabo where everybody was at, and then I guess he wasn't outside to watch the fireworks or something, which
I was talking to Garrett.
Yeah, which apparently is a huge deal. Like I was like, y'all are about to like enter a relationship. Like pick your battles.
Correct.
So he was like, I'm so sorry. And then the way he acted afterwards of like almost trying to like, I don't know what the psychology word is, but like love bomb her and like over apologize, but then overly like cater to her was so strange. And I was like, why doesn't he just be like, oh shit, I'm sorry. And then
like when he was like bringing her drinks
and then
like
sitting there and then like talking, like they were obviously having a like a girl conversation that he didn't need to be part of. And so like just bring her the drink and be like, hey, like I'm just gonna bring this for you. And she didn't even like the drink. She's like, no, I don't even like Clubsetter or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is so strange. And then that's when you're right. Then they did when they went back to the room, all of a sudden she got like really nasty with him about him, like I guess how he talks too much or something. I don't know. And I was like, I don't feel like he was talking too much. I feel like he was explaining his perspective. And then she kind of just got like rude about it. And then he's like, you're right. I'll be quiet. I was like,
I'll put this in my mouth.
Yeah, like this is so strange. Like if I said that to Michael, he'd be like, I'll just go fuck myself then. Like
he would say those exact words.
He would literally say that and then get up and walk away. And then he'd be like, no, it's fine. It's fine. And I'd be like, oh fuck, that was mean of me. You know, but she just like sat there like staring at him like, I want you to like feel how much you talk or something. I don't know. So then, okay. So was this the guy you were talking about earlier that was texting some girl before he got on the okay. And I thought so. And so then I started
while he was on the show.
Yes, while he was on the show. So then I tried to find the kinks, but they haven't released the kinks that he was into. So that was weird. So weird. So yeah, I was like, he is a people pleaser. This is not good.
Well, and I think it's people pleasing has become a way for him to not have to show his true self because, even sexually, he sounds like he is someone who prefers to think outside of the box, and that's okay. But this kind of people pleasing, yes, mamming, you're right, is in an effort to kind of hide his true reality, which is what a lot of people do. They've learned to do that. They feel like their true selves aren't good enough for other people. So they look for other people to tell them how to think, act, do, etc. So let's talk about people pleasing, baby.
Okay.
Yes. So, people pleasing is a behavior pattern characterized by the excessive desire to gain approval or avoid conflict by prioritizing others' needs, wants, and opinions over your own. So, the way I like to explain this is people pleasing isn't a bad thing. Every like every behavior lives on a spectrum,
Mhm.
right? So, it's okay to want to like be there for your partner and create an environment where your partner is seen and heard, right? So
Mhm.
it can stem from this kind of positive, but well, I'll add to that. If we're thinking about people pleasing, it's like being helpful, being considerate, saying yes to tasks at work, being a team player.
Yeah.
Where it becomes an issue when it's at the expense of yourself,
Right.
right? So it causes stress, burnout, overcommitment, resentment is a huge one. And in what we're going to talk about, you begin to neglect you
Yeah.
because it becomes everything in your reality.
And not just neglect you, because it's really hard for people pleasers, in my experience with working with them, to like recognize that they're neglecting themselves, right? But it's not so much of like, oh, I'm neglecting to shower. It's more so of like, oh, I'm not going to go to the gym. Oh, I just didn't have time to eat because I had to run and get the kids and my mom called, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's neglecting your goals, your habits, what you want to achieve for yourself, your work productivity, your aspirations, your relationships. Like, it could be that you're trying to please maybe, I don't, mom so much that you're neglecting your husband too.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Mm-hmm.
that relationship isn't being developed any further. So it can go in a spectrum of places, but
Right.
when we see it, most of the time it's coming from at the cost of your own health as well.
Right. And it's a big one
Yeah.
because, historically women have been in that do everything role, be the mom, be the caretaker, when we've seen what that has done to women's mental health.
Yeah.
Right. And now we're adding a layer onto that because we're not just stay-at-home moms. We are working individuals. So now we bring that into our work life, our career, and then always, it's going to be at the expense of something else,
Mhm.
whether that's yourself, which normally it is, because if you've learned to put others before yourself, then why would you pay attention to you? Your comfort zone is taking care of others, not
Right.
yourself, or like you said, your relationship as well.
Yep.
So let's talk about what this looks like. And we're talking about women, but this can be men and women,
As
right?
we've seen.
Yes. And so really it's that difficulty in saying no or setting boundaries,
Mhm.
right? I'm going to go into, actually, let me add this in. I'm going to go into my rules for people pleasing
Okay.
because it's going to be super helpful with understanding this. But, doing things for others, even when you don't have time, you're already stressed out,
Mhm.
you maybe, that person can actually do it themselves, but they're like handing it to you because they know you'll do it.
Right.
You're enabling, big time enablers, people pleasers.
Yep.
And just add this in rules for people pleasing. This is something I talk about all the time. What else?
I would say they tend to almost like, it looks like an overcompensation because
Mhm.
they're so fearful of getting rejected or a fear of like conflict, right? So it's
Yep.
easier to do the thing if I avoid the conflict. So I'm
Mhm.
pleasing to avoid discomfort. And this is one of the things in the program that we really work on, is like getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Right.
And so pushing through. They often don't express their own feelings. So instead of like creating this conflict and saying, hey, actually, no, I don't want to go to dinner with you guys on Sunday or whatever it is, they are not going to express their true feelings. They're going to suppress them. And so
Mhm.
oftentimes this creates that separation of how I feel and what my behaviors do that we've talked about. So maybe I am emotionally eating because I don't actually express that I'm sad or frustrated or don't have the time to do this, instead of just telling them no, right?
Right. Right. And they believe like that they're responsible for how other people think, feel, and do.
Right, right.
Which, as someone who's been a caretaker in my life, when you put other people's actions or inactions, when you put that responsibility on you, you will fail most of the
All
time.
the time.
right? You'll get those hints of like, oh, my daughter got an A on her test, but you're expecting perfection from another person in an effort for you to feel worthy about yourself.
Right.
It's not possible because we're only in charge of ourselves.
Right.
So I just wanted to add that in there.
Well, and I think
But
this seeking validation, I often see it with clients like in the workplace
Mhm.
too, where they're going above and beyond. And we've already established that workplace is not somewhere they're going to stay. It's just a pit stop in their career. And the
Mhm.
workplace tends to be, I don't want to say toxic, but it's just not a good, like, they don't enjoy going every day. Or not that anybody enjoys going to work every day, but
I do.
there's a sense of conflict, or there's a sense of like they're not doing enough there. And so they continually try and do more and more and more, always looking for validation from their peers or their management, which is
Mhm.
again, when they don't get that, they feel a sense of failure or that they're not good enough. So it perpetuates these self-beliefs as well.
Yeah. One thing that we don't have listed here that I think is important to note too is that they do a lot of these things and expect something back,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
They will, as we're going to talk about, like they'll overcommit, right?
Yeah.
So that people see that, look, I'm coming to your party, or look, I'm taking on this task, or look, da da da. And they're expecting something in return.
Right.
That normally their expectation is something in return for them, but that's not how it works. You know, we'll talk about the dynamics of it later, but overcommitting to make other people happy, which oftentimes leads to stress and burnout. One of the things I hear from my people pleasing clients is there's just not enough time in the day. I'm like,
Right.
well, yes, there is. There's just not enough time. There's too many things to do. And when we begin to chip away at this, and they're like I have one client who now wakes up and spends 30 to 45 minutes in the morning just on her time.
Ooh.
She goes, it's crazy. She's like, I have so much more time for myself in the day. I'm not starting my day off with task. I'm collecting my thoughts. I'm praying. I'm journaling. You know, she's just chilling. And it's been one of the greatest things for her. But like if she does, where she came from was this person who was very depressed. She felt like it was her job. I'll talk about her in a little bit, but she just felt like it was her job to do everything for everyone. She is the one who came up with please perfect perform. And that was kind of her identity. And that caused a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. And for this particular client, she did not eat because of that.
Right. And then we see this like going back to the workplace, or not getting validation, or not getting the hope of return that they're looking for, is the self-esteem issues.
Oh, yeah.
So it's always.
Yeah. Well, we get, just like I was talking about, if we think about someone who is boundaryless, oftentimes their ego state is one that is less than. And that's, I'm not, I'm the problem. I'm not good enough. And therefore, in an effort to fill this void of self-worth, or lack thereof, as I believe I continue to do for others, but nobody's going to rescue you. Right. You've got to do it in yourself. But they don't believe that because, we'll talk about where this kind of comes from.
Okay. So I've got a question for you. And this is just out of curiosity. I was wondering, because you've worked, we have the business of mindset plus nutrition plus exercise, but even before that, and still in your own time, not your own time, but in another business, we do life coaching, or you do life coaching. I don't. Do you feel like there's an increase in people pleasing that you're seeing, or is it just more people are aware of it, or more people are seeking help therapeutically and we're identifying it more often? So kind of like autism, like, do we have more autism present because there is truly more autism, or is it our identification of it has improved?
Yeah. So I have a few answers to that. The first one is, we need to realize that this generation, now our generation, we grew up in a society where there was no social media, right? And so I think with the introduction of social media in itself is people pleasing.
Yeah.
Because we are projecting an image of ourselves so others will find us good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that piece of it.
Yeah.
We have to also realize that we come from a generation where like we most likely, like as millennials, had working parents, right? So then we have two working parents. So we see like, okay, well, mom works. Maybe some of you haven't who are a bit older, but like I would say someone in their 40s probably had both of their parents working in some capacity.
Yeah.
Right. But that parent, that especially our mothers, they were raised by maybe non-working mothers. So they really struggled with their identities of, am I a working woman? Am I a mother? Right. And overcompensating for that. I saw when I worked with a lot of teenagers that a lot of moms had a lot of mom guilt. Right. And I think this is still true today. A lot of mom guilt of trying to build their careers, but also like take care of their kids. So then they may overcompensate on their children. So then the children are learning those behaviors through mom. You know, so there's a lot of factors involved in it specifically today. But I think social media in this roundabout way is us trying to seek external validation from others. And with this online presence, we then have to kind of keep up with that in person. And so we're going to continue to try to keep up with this facade of, look at me, I'm so wonderful. I will, let me do things for you. Let me make you happy. And it's in an effort to avoid people seeing us as a fraud. So to answer your question, there's also there's more exposure to this with social media if you're following the right people to understand what people pleasing is. But social media in itself is that. Yeah. So more people are aware of the behaviors, just like you said, autism, more people are aware. It has a name. Codependency has a name, right? And so it's easier for people to self-diagnose.
Yes.
And for me, being that my entire career is based out of the post-induction therapy codependency model and attachment theory by John Bowlby, that all comes back down to our interactions with others, right? So you have secure attachment, you have avoidant attachment, you have anxious attachment, and then you have anxious avoidant attachment.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I have that in here.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And so we have to think about how the dynamics of the family, mom working, being away, how that affected your attachment to others. And so it's like we talk about, did you get more, because mom is working in a way, and again, moms, please do not think this is like a shit on you, because do you, girl? I want to explain this from a
psychological point, like a clinical standpoint, as opposed to okay, now what do we do about this?
Yeah. So if mom is working, dad is working to make ends meet. My parents did that. I was a fucking latchkey kid. Then we don't have that constant community, that constant, they say it takes a village to raise a child. That's because we used to live in fucking villages, and our grandmas were there and our uncles were there and our cousins were there and everyone was there. But as time has gone on and we now are in this era of working parents, then that affects our attachment to people. And maybe for people pleasers, they maybe cleaned the house when mom was gone, or they helped with dinner, like whatever they could do to find a way to connect with mom, because they only had so much time with mom or dad, they did. And so these changing gender roles and dynamics of the family unit very much has probably made this
more prevalent.
More prevalent, yeah. Because it's affected our attachment to who we are and how we're seen, loved, and heard.
Interesting.
That's my answer.
Okay. Pretty good.
See, I just needed a moment.
I know. Okay. Pop off, sister.
Say more.
She got therapied. So I think, as Christina
we kind of already went over this.
Yeah, the relationships of people that that we can see this in, and we've gone over this just to recap. It can be personal, so partners, so postponing your own interests and hobbies and interests to spend time on their hobbies and interests or spend time with them. I know I hate when girls do that. Like,
love addicts.
Keep your own shit because they may not work out with you. So, friends, of course. So we've talked about that. Family. And so sometimes allowing your family to dictate your own personal decisions. So professionally, the great example of like overcommitment to task, and
or even our clients.
Yes.
People pleasing us.
Yes. They'll please us. And then we don't give them the validation because we're like, what's happening here? And then they're disappointed because I didn't give them the validation, but I didn't even know they were trying to please me. And so,
or you didn't give them the validation because giving them the validation would only be enabling them to keep people pleasing.
Right.
So,
and then as Christina alluded to in her montage of what causes this is childhood, right? So we're imitating our parents. Our parents may be emotionally distant. There's different attachments that we have to parents and relationships. So those can create different tendencies of people pleasing, or I should say behaviors, right? Some of us just have a people pleasing personality. Like childhood could be fine. Everything could be good, but for some reason, I just want to be very agreeable. I don't want to create rifts, and I just don't want to have any confrontation. So therefore, go ahead. And
this is so important that what Amanda just said. I want to talk about this.
Okay.
My husband has had a pretty fucking good life.
Yeah, he has.
However,
so is mine.
what he did not learn was they weren't talking about emotions. Like he was fine. He wasn't abused. He wasn't neglected. He wasn't talked down to. Everything was pretty vanilla. But we need a little Neapolitan in our life because we need to learn how to discuss conflict. We need to learn how to ask for our wants and needs to be met. We need to learn how to receive criticism.
Yes.
And not feel like we're, the whole fucking world is ending.
Yes.
Whereas where I come from, my people pleasing comes from and mine is caretaking. There's a small difference. Like, I don't give a fuck what most people think about me, but I will take care of, and I used to do this work. That's not true. Take that back. I currently don't give a fuck what people think about me, but in my upbringing, I actually would caretake my mom, who did not learn skills to emotionally regulate herself. So she was often dysregulated. And in an effort to keep myself safe, I learned how to regulate her, to act in a way in an effort to regulate her emotions.
Her emotions.
Right. And a part of that was like performing and stuff like that. Right. So that then transferred. I've talked about this in my own, like the relationship episode, transferred into my own relationships, even my friendships. Like, coming back to what you're saying, like, you could just be a really nice kid.
Right.
You could come from a family that does like voluntary work or missionary work. And you're like, this brings me so much joy. Right. What brings me joy is to see my friends smile, because like, I love doing like the parties, for like where I make these big elaborate.
There's nothing for. There is no for.
Saturday.
I do these parties.
I do. And I love the like, wow, it's this motherly thing. And I get that from my mom because she likes to feed people. I like to feed people and like give them an experience.
Yes.
I don't expect my friends to do that back to me. But if I'm someone who naturally, like I said, missionary, voluntary, maybe you did, like my mom and I used to walk around and hand out sandwiches to the homeless at the end of the day. Like, that filled my heart up.
Yeah.
Right. But if I don't have any other sense of who I am, and that's the only time I'm feeling proud of myself, we can see how that can spiral into this codependent pattern of people pleasing. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like, your parents weren't there, your attachment is whatever it is. It doesn't have to be that. And I think that's really important that you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, it also goes into like, as you talked about the cultures too, and gender roles, as far as moms going to work more so now, or women going to work in general. You said it doesn't have to necessarily be about this, but it can be from trauma, right? Of people pleasing from there. Whether that's emotional, sexual, or physical abuse too. So it doesn't have to be. Go ahead. Go.
Pop off. We have to think about trauma is like, we're going to figure out what we can do to survive. So one of the parts of the autonomic nervous system, or I'm sorry, excuse me, sympathetic nervous system, we have fight, flight,
Freeze.
fight, flight, freeze. And I added one, please. Some people say fawn, but oftentimes fawn is compared to freeze, but please. You've heard of people who have been in situations where they'll just try to make the house perfect so that the abusive person will be okay.
Right.
We've even heard of this in like trigger warning in like sexual abuse scenarios where they will like almost mother their perpetrator.
Yes.
And the brain will go to fawning or pleasing because it's learned that keeps me safe. Right. And so I always add that. And I like please, fight, flight, freeze, or please.
Yep.
Yeah. That's not one that we talk about often. But, you know, as we talked about with attachment theory. So for those of you who don't know, John Bowlby worked with mothers and infants, and he would study them where he would have the mother leave the room and then see how the child reacted, and then have the mother come back and then also see how the child reacted. And he came up with the 4 attachment styles. Now, secure attachment is mom leaves, and I'm not necessarily like sure, but I'm not also like freaking the fuck out. And then when she comes, like, I'm happy to see her. I feel safe, move on, right? But the attachment style, so like insecure attachment is mom leaves and I am freaking out. When mom comes back, not only am I not calming down, but I also might punish her for leaving. So think about this in your girlfriends, where any sign of abandonment, they freak the fuck out. And then when the person comes, they'll almost use that against that person. Have you seen that?
I'm thinking of someone in particular. Yes.
The third type is that, so insecure, or you can say, I would call that almost the anxious attachment.
Okay.
But so anxious attachment is hypervigilance to maintain closeness and avoid abandonment. So they'll be clingy, but also kind of use it against mom. Like cling to them, but then kind of test mom to see if she's going to do it again. Okay. Avoidant attachment is where mom leaves, comes back, and they're just like, meh. Like,
you were gone.
Cool. They're like talking to the other person over here, you know? They hide their true feelings and maintain emotional distance. With avoidant attachment, we oftentimes become needless, wantless. An avoidant is not usually a people pleaser. They're a rescuer. And there's a difference between the two. Yeah. Whereas an anxious attachment is the people pleaser. They're the girl who is acting like their partner, taking on their partner's lives. They don't have a life outside of the relationship. And they usually end up with avoidance. And so the avoidance is like, whoa, too much. And then they jet. The anxious avoidant or anxious person comes in and is like, wait, where are you going? And then it becomes this whole fucking thing.
Oof.
I could talk about this all day long. So
there's a lot of therapy here.
There is.
There's a lot of therapy in these people pleasing tendencies. Because when I was doing our notes, I was like, God damn. Like, all right. So even going into more therapy, cognitive distortions coming from causing the people pleasing. So catastrophizing. So we're out overestimating the negative outcomes. And we'll link our episode on the cognitive distortions that we've done before, because that was a good episode. All or nothing, viewing the extreme. So if I don't clean the house, he's going to do this. And so therefore I will, and just make everything nice, and it'll be great. And then hopefully I have love. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And like, oh, he's not even going to notice you clean the house, homegirl. Nope. Let me tell you that. Then mind reading. So assuming others' expectations. So if I do this for Christina, then Christina will see that I really care and value her. And then therefore we will have this happen. And then she'll see that I'm a valued person, and I'll just feel that much better. Right. Yeah. One thing that when I was going through this is, and as you've heard with Christina talking back and forth about the therapy aspects or the mental health aspects, is there's a lot of interrelatedness in here. So it could be, maybe it is just a personality, but when we look at maybe these attachment theories or styles came from the way your upbringing was with childhood, or maybe the way your mother displayed her love to you. Maybe it's in a cultural aspect. And so there's not necessarily,
Just
I don't want to say
way.
like a mental health reasoning. It was more so of a cultural upbringing. But then sometimes in culture, there is trauma that happens with it, just the way spousal roles or gender roles can be too.
Right.
So
There's
it's
so
not
many
just
aspects to how it manifests.
Yeah.
You know, and the reason why we like to talk about like how the etiology of these things is that we want you to know like this is a learned behavior and it's nothing wrong with you. Like I said, that there is taking care of people and being a kind person is a wonderful trait.
right.
But again, as we're going to talk about, how does it, affect our health goals?
Right.
And specifically our health goals. And so when it's at the expense of ourselves, any sort of behavior we do, that's when we have to think, shit, I have crossed the line. This is becoming my identity. This is becoming my worth. And for our clientele, oftentimes we're seeing this through a lack of self-care.
Yeah.
Right. So nutrition, they may feel pressured to, eat what other people are eating. Husband brings home pizza. Well, he brought home pizza. I didn't want to make him feel bad.
Right.
Well,
Or
how is not eating a pizza going to make your husband feel bad? And if that's the case, he should probably go to therapy.
Yes. Well, even we talked about this like in the binge bond episodes too, right? Of like the pressure of like, well, my friend and I always do this. And it's like, yeah, but your goals have changed, right? And if you want that, we can change it. But I don't want to upset her. So therefore, I will just put my goals to the side. So that way we are not in a confrontation. Skipping meals because you're too busy, which is a common thing.
Oh my God.
Because I know all the time, I'm like, how are you not hungry? And they're like, I didn't even know because I was so busy. And this is where you'll hear, and I know each of you have been told this, like we all have the same 24 hours in a day. And then that's usually used to like motivate people to get their shit together. But when you can break it down and say, okay, realistically, do we all have the same 24 hours? Yes. But the allocation of those 24 hours is much different for everybody. And so like, for example, the client that you were talking about, where she takes the time in the morning, that's an allocation of her hours to herself, right? So maybe I don't have time in the morning, but I do in the evening. Maybe that's the hours that I allocate towards myself.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That particular client where she worked, they wouldn't give her a lunch.
What?
Or they weren't, she would work through lunch. And it's like a job that she should have a lunch. And so we worked on that. I'm like, no, fuck that. You're taking a lunch.
I did that with the client too. And then she's like, I'm always just so behind. I'm like, do you think you're behind because you're hungry? I was like, just try it for a week. Have a lunch. And then she did. She's like, oh my gosh, I'm all cut up. And I was like, no shit.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Food is fuel. But one thing you said, when oftentimes we're not expressing our wants and needs, they're not being cared for. And if you've never learned that, right, and you don't know how to do it, then you're going to figure out a way to manage those emotions. And that's where emotional eating comes in.
Yeah.
Right. Is I'm figuring out how to, if we go back to like dysregulation, so sympathetic nervous system, when I need to get back to that quote unquote regulated state, I don't know how to do that without this thing. So I may turn to food. And I was listening to a Bible or a church broadcast that the client I was just talking about sent to me.
Yeah.
Yes, it's really good. And he goes, it was about mindset and like the whole thing. And he talks about it. He goes, when you're a baby and you're hungry, you're fed, right? And that helps calm your body and you're calmed down. And like we've talked about, when you're dysregulated in childhood, if you're not being taught, okay, let's take a few deep breaths, like let's calm down, let's whatever parents do to help their kids regulate their nervous system, here's a lollipop, right? So we learn that in ourselves. So it's not only, I'm not learning the skills when I need to, but then I'm replacing the ability to calm myself with food, right? My parents replaced that for me. And so as I've never learned the skills, I'm never going to share my wants and needs. boom, there comes some food, and it's like, yay, I feel better. But then you don't feel better.
But you don't feel better.
Yeah.
You could say even the same. I would go into exercise on that of, okay, you know, blew your body out and you think you feel better, but you actually don't feel better. Right. So like the over exercise to not feel the feeling of like disappointment that you did for somebody else, or maybe that they didn't recognize you for XYZ, or even other end of the spectrum of over exercising to meet this persona that you think that a fit person should have as a body. Yeah, that was me too.
That was me.
Like,
well, and I have my client Rachel, who everyone's familiar with, like her whole thing was she came from a Hasidic Jewish community where everything was decided for her. And so exercise was a way for her to feel anything.
Right.
She's emotionally intelligent, but she didn't realize she had that strength until we brought it out of her. But she knew something like, I don't feel anything. And she didn't have a relationship with herself. And so exercise not only became a way for her to feel, but then everyone was like, oh, look at how good you look.
So I'm getting my pleasing out of this now.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And so it's more so of like, even now let's go to the opposite side of the spectrum, right? I'm going to skip workouts because my mom needs me again. And or someone needs me again, or I overcommitted to my schedule. Like we just have so many things this week between the 3 activities each kid does. So there's 9 activities because I have 3 kids, and then I just don't have time for myself. I know.
Right. And I have a partner that I'm not asking to do anything because I don't want to upset him because he has such a hard day at work.
Right. So
I would love for the women here to write down what their husband or their partners do. I'm just going to assume heterosexual relationships on this one. Like write down what your husband does and then write down all the shit that you do. Yeah. And if it's off balance, we need to have a conversation. Now, I would like my husband not to do that for me because he does pick up a lot of slack in his house.
I know sometimes when Michael and I get in that debate, I try not to get in that debate, but then he starts like naming stuff and I'm like, oh, damn. I forgot you do pay the car insurance for everything and all that.
Oh yeah. Mark pays all the bills.
No, I pay the bills. He just takes care of the shit. Kind of.
Yeah.
Anyway, so even going, okay, so I'm not going to go to the gym because I'm fear of judgment there too. Right. So if I'm not, so I'm not, it's just an awkward situation of wanting to please people and make sure I'm doing it appropriately. And so I don't go because I'm not, and I don't want people to judge me. And it's like, so I just won't create conflict in the gym. And all of those things, like you're like, what?
Or ask for my needs to be met and say like, how the fuck do I do this?
Yeah, it's yes. And so you're like thinking like, no, that doesn't happen. It's like, you're not thinking that, but that's what the breakdown is when we really put it that way. And so that's the one thing with our clients, they'll say like, I don't know, I just like don't like the gym because of this. And it's like, or is it because if we really think about it, so again, like going back to Rachel, like getting in touch with your emotions about how this actually feels and then putting sentences together with that, that's usually what it's coming out of this fear of judgment.
Right. And being seen as a fraud, right?
Yeah.
Well, and this, just a segue off of that is like, but then they feel so terrible on their bodies and they want other people to see their bodies as good. Yeah. They want that external validation of, oh, wow, look how amazing you look like Rachel. Right. And they use changing their bodies or trying to change their bodies as this way that they're going to magically be okay. Yeah. I don't know if you saw Crystal's post recently, but she lost some weight. She was on a GLP-1 plus some other stuff. And she said, nothing changed when I lost 25 pounds. But then she talked about, prior to this, I had these other things already in place, values, morals, things like that. And I thought that was a good thing to say is like, I have not in our program now, but prior to creating this program, women would lose weight and still feel like absolute dog shit about themselves because their validation, either people were like, yay, that's great. And then that was it. They expect people to like constantly reassure them that they look good, but they might get a couple compliments and then it's gone. Right. And they've never really created that sense of security in themselves. It also, though, will keep them in comparison to themselves, either when they were skinnier or to other women. Right. Yeah. And they'll feel inadequate if they don't meet the standard, right? Society creates very unrealistic standards of beauty for women. And we're constantly thriving as if it's going to change who we are as a character, as a soul, as a being.
Yeah. This one is my favorite for my postpartum clients because, yeah. Because it's like they get to postpartum and then they have the expectation that their body they'll feel different about their body, and they don't. And it's heartbreaking to hear the things they think and feel about it, and the need of validation that they're okay where they're at, that they literally had a baby either like a month ago, 6 months ago, whatever it is. But then on top of that, the comparison of themselves to others, right? And especially like you were talking about earlier, social media or even friends. Like, well, my friend, this happened to her within 6 weeks, and here I am 6 months later, and I'm still like this. They just, and it's this wanting to almost like please society that they should have had they should have had their shit together more. Is honestly what it sounds like when it comes out of their mouth. Like they should have known better, and they should have had their shit together, and they should have done something different during pregnancy, because all
over themselves.
Yeah, all of those things would have led to a different feeling postpartum. And really, it's kind of like you were saying, how were you thinking about yourself before this even happened, though?
Yes.
And what were your actions before?
Let me bring it all together, ladies. Okay. So then what are we doing? We're focusing on us and the things we're not doing, and we're all in our head. And what are we doing with this new baby? We're taking away from what makes us good and human and whole. Love, compassion, caretaking, safety, all of the things we talk about, but we're all in here in our head. And it's creating this environment where your children, especially babies, are boundaryless, you guys. And what I mean by that is emotionally, they can sense that shit. And over time, that can definitely turn into like, not in like infancy as much. Actually, no, not infancy, but like as they start, their frontal lobe starts to form, they'll start doing things to kind of distract you.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's interesting that you say that, because there's a client, her son he's probably he's probably 2 now or 3. I can't remember. I think he turned 1 last year, and so he should be 2 now. Where there's some difficulties happening in the household, without getting into too much detail. And the baby, or the son rather, the 2-year-old, is now starting to almost pacify mommy and come to mommy and check on mommy. And so there's where the people pleasing can start when we're talking about childhood. And so that's different from body image, but going into how we're talking and thinking and feeling of what's happening in childhood can be a catalyst for how we behave as we get older.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, and then, obviously if we are overcommitting, right? We are doing things when we know that we don't have the bandwidth to do it. This will lead to a lot of anxiety.
Yes.
I would say mostly anxiety and like panic. It can feel like you're suffocating. I've talked about that being me before, where I feel like I'm suffocating and too much is happening and I can't breathe. And that stems from anxiety. And so you feel very shameful, you feel very, very guilty, right? But you'll just keep going, because let's think about this. If my identity is to take care of other people, and I find that when people are happy with me, it fills up my self-worth cup. But because I can't control other people and their actions or inactions, then I might feel guilt and shame that I was not able to please them. And because the only way that I feel better about myself is to please people, boom, now I'm back in that cycle. So good. Let's talk about what to do.
Let's go positive, please.
Positive. They're like, God, this fucking podcast makes me want to call my mom and yell at her. Again, you got to figure it out. Like, you've got to know why you're like this. Right. Sorry, like, not to be a bitch, but like, you can't change something you don't know. Right. And it's beyond just being like, I'm a people pleaser. Well, why? Why? Because you don't know. Right. And it's beyond just being like, I'm a people pleaser. Well, why? Because you don't know. Right. And it's beyond just being like, I'm a people pleaser. Well, why? Because you don't know. Right. And it's beyond just being like, I'm a people pleaser. Well, why? Because you don't know. Right. And it's beyond just being like, I'm a people pleaser. Well, why? Because you don't know. Right. And it's beyond just being like, I'm a people pleaser. Well, why? Because you don't know. Right. And it's beyond just being like, I'm a people pleaser. Well, why? Because you don't know. Right. And it's beyond just being like, I'm a people pleaser. Well, why? Because you don't know. Right. And it's beyond just being like, I'm a people pleaser. Well, why? Because you don't know. Right. And it's beyond just being like, I'm a people pleaser. Well, why? Because you don't know. Right. And it's beyond just being like, I'm a people pleaser. Well, why? Because you don't know. Right. And it's beyond just being like, I'm a people pleaser. Well, w what does your people pleasing look like? Because your people pleasing might look like different from that person's people pleasing, because there are differences, as you can hear the different types of like the nuance of like the I'm going to take care of mommy people pleaser, the I'm going to look a certain way people pleaser. Yes, could they all play in the sandbox together? Yes, but it's different.
So when we're solving our people pleasing tendencies, all right, I don't want to say solving, improving. Improving. So we need to talk about, and you've alluded to this throughout this episode, of boundaries, right?
I have something before this stuff.
Oh, okay, go for it.
You got to start understanding you.
Oof.
Because I can't set a boundary if I have no clue about my reality.
Yeah.
So your reality, guys, as I mentioned before, is your thoughts, feelings, wants, and needs. It's that part of your voice behind that inner critic. It's that part of your authentic self, your ideal self, that says, I don't like this. Sometimes it'll just start with the gut feeling. I don't like this. I don't want this. This makes me happy. This makes me sad. This brings me joy. That is where you need to start, because I can't set a boundary if I don't know what fucking boundary to set.
That's true.
So checking in with yourself, just listening to yourself. And with our past episodes on like inner critic, recognizing what that is. And then what is the rest of that voice? What do you want? Do you want the fucking cookie? Eat the cookie, right? So that's a big, big step. And we have other episodes on talking about how to do that, which we'll link, I think, the episode of Your Body is Calling. Listen to it. Answer it. So we talk about that there. So we'll link some of those episodes below.
This actually goes really well now that you're saying this, because you're talking about awareness, essentially, to put a label on it into our method of what we do for clients too. So first step, method of bringing awareness. No. And so then, like I had talked about before, is we need to bring in boundaries. And again, we can't set the boundary if you don't know what the boundary needs to be. So
or you don't even know your boundary system.
Yeah. Or you'd even know you didn't have a boundary. So for example, mom calls, actually, you know what? I've got a perfect one from one of the group gals. Dad calls at all hours of the night having questions on technology about his phone, about this. Yeah. And now that seems silly, but she would literally stop, do whatever she was doing and answer the call and help him. And that was so frustrating for her, because now she's trying to help him. She's not getting done what she needed to. And so that was a perfect opportunity to say, okay, here's a boundary. Maybe you tell dad, and this is actually a good conversation for you to have with our audience, is, do we tell them or do we just do it? Right. And I think it depends on the circumstance. So does she tell dad, like, hey, if you're calling me past 8, I'm not answering. If you're calling me during working hours, I'm not answering. So if you need me, send a text and I will call you to figure out what we need to call. I think that's completely reasonable.
Yeah.
For example, we'll go talking about like I don't know. Do you have an example of someone of like where we don't need to tell them, I guess?
Yeah, that's usually like a physical or sexual boundary. I mean, yes, we have to say no, but like if we need to leave the situation, which you're telling them without words.
Yes.
Like in any situation where you are not safe and you need to leave, that's where we'll have to fucking be like, I'm not safe right now. Can you keep me safe? No, fucking get out of there.
I guess that's such a, not to harp on Gen Z and the youngers, but they like do that. So where I hear that, like, I just don't feel safe in this space. And it's like, if you don't feel safe, just walk away, like get out. Like,
yeah,
y'all are just having an upsetting conversation, in my opinion. But apparently if you don't feel safe, like, let's leave.
Yeah. So, I would say that, but your other boundaries, time, there's another one, your internal boundaries that you need to set for yourself.
Yeah.
So if you need to check yourself because you're wrecking yourself, then you need to be like, you don't have to tell someone that, you need to tell yourself that. You need to be like, okay, this is the me thing. I'm making this about me. So that would be another time where that is a boundary. Internal boundaries are
communicate it.
Yeah. So, but time, physical space, object, like
there we go.
Boundaries around our own, like, personal items, boundaries around our time. Like I said, yes.
Okay. So we're figuring out, so we've got the awareness, we decided what the boundary we're going to set. Now, how do we practice that too? Because this is something you're not going to just be like, okay, I'm not going to accept my dad's phone call. Like, you know,
I have rules for
yes,
this.
we have kind of a protocol. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I have my 4 rules. I don't
Oh, you
talk
have your
about.
4 rules?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So just to reiterate what you said, so in the method, the knowing part, we include self-worth rules. We include family dynamics to understand this. We include a reflection on your boundary system and your way your family express their emotions. So that's all I know. In name, you're going to name that inner critic voice to separate it from your authentic voice. We added in what does my body need? So you begin to listen to yourself. So that's in name. And then in notice, right? We're going to begin to notice when we need a boundary. But this is the easiest thing. 4 rules for people pleasing. We do not help other people if they can do it themselves.
That's a big thing in childcare too.
Yes.
Of like, if the kid can do it themselves, we don't do it for them.
No. And let them fucking try, because that's how they learn to do it themselves.
Yeah.
We do not people please if they do not ask you directly. And sometimes that's even asking you if you have the bandwidth to do it.
Right.
We do this very well with each other.
We do that. We go, hey, can you hear me for a sec?
Yeah.
And I go,
Like, petty update. Or what did I say today? Am I being petty?
Today, but I was like,
being petty check-in?
I said immediately no, but need more context.
Yeah. We do not people please if we are expecting something in return, and that is including love.
Yes.
That is including them to show up to your birthday party. That is including getting a raise. I mean, we do not people please if we know we're going to feel negatively afterwards. Y'all, people will be like, can you just jump on a quick call with me? No. You know why? Because I don't have time to do that. Because if I did that, it's going to take away from this break that I need to have for 15 minutes. And old me would be like, yeah, I could do both. And then I'd be flustered for the rest of the day. So I just say, no, I can't do that right now. Here's my scheduler. Please schedule it with me.
Or the call's never actually 15 minutes.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So again, we do not help others if they can do it themselves. We do not help others if they do not ask us directly with their fucking mouths. We do not help others if we're expecting something in return. We do not help others if we are going to feel negatively afterwards. And here's the thing about these 4 rules. If there's 3 yeses and 1 no, we're not doing it.
It has to be all 4 no's or all 4 yeses. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I would say in addition to those rules, actually, those would be great to put in your notes on your phone. So that way you could reference them. Yeah. But then how do we do a
post on this?
We should do a post on that. So then to say, okay, now how do I actually do this? And so this goes back to everything that we've said too. You're not going to do it perfectly every time. It's going to take time. I actually, Sean, the therapist, when Michael and I were seeing him, because we were talking about boundaries and whatnot. And I was like, well, what happens if he breaks the boundary or whatever? I forget the exact question. He goes, he didn't break the boundary. You let him break the boundary. So set the boundary. Mm-hmm. And so when that person you feel breaks the boundary or you didn't set the boundary, we need to kind of reframe, go back and practice, go back. How could I have done that different? Go back and say, okay, give yourself some self-compassion. Don't be like, oh, my boundaries aren't working. It's more so of okay, I'm trying this and this is really hard. So going back to my client, for example, with her father, you could say that's pretty easy to set the time boundary for when he needs help with his cell phone at, 70 years old. But also it's not, because she's been pleasing him his whole life. He's used to her answering on the second ring. And so that's going to take time for him to adjust to. But then, so say she does it successfully, she needs to recognize that too. So say client says yes to all of your 4 kind of, what would we say?
Rules for people pleasing.
Yeah. So your 4 rules, they set the boundary. At first it's really awkward and it feels uncomfortable, as we've talked about. But then when we need to walk away from is going, wow, I did that. Okay. I feel good. I feel good. I feel good. I feel good. Now I've got time to work out maybe, or now I've got time to make the cake that I've been wanting to make for my husband for his birthday and not worry about my mother or do whatever. So you always have to almost assess the situation, see how you can improve, see how you made progress on setting that. And then in addition, when we do make that progress, whether it was full boundary implementation or halfway, is to always I don't want to say reward yourself, but acknowledge yourself.
Mhm.
Because that's going to build your self-esteem when especially if you're continually looking for that validation.
Absolutely. One of the easiest ways to do this is number one, buy my book, Don't Hold Their Poop. I will link it in I wrote a book on book plug. I wrote a book on setting boundaries called Don't Hold Their Poop. And it's about recognizing when you are internalizing other people's emotional projections on you, which is all about people pleasing. And it gives you literally step-by-step tasks on how to do this. One of the things that I say is do this. Ready, guys? When you X up, what I make about that is Y. And I'm asking you to do Z. I was going to say hoping. That's not assertive enough because we want to be assertive. We don't want to be aggressive. We don't want to be passive. We don't want to be passive aggressive. We want to be assertive. When you, Dad, call me after 8 p.m. to deal with technology, I am making up that you do not respect my nighttime routine.
Yeah.
And I would like for you to send it in a text and I will respond at my leisure.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about this. When I say this, you guys are gonna be like, oh my God, so-and-so is going to do such and such. That person, if someone is not respecting your boundary, they are not a healthy person. And guess what? They fall right into your codependency. They keep you a people pleaser. So for all of you out there who are like, oh, number one, that's your own fear because you haven't done it before. We are scared of the things that we don't have confidence in, but you've got to do it to be confident. And if you do it and someone's treating you like an asshole, guess what? They're an asshole. And you will find out real quick the people who support your growth and your healing and the people who do not. The people who do not are people who live in your codependent ego state. The people who support your growth are people who live in your authentic self ego state.
Yeehaw.
I think that's it. What else?
It. No, we've used plenty of client examples out of this, but I mean, I had some studies in there just to kind of finalize it. And so we will link those so that way y'all can look and see for yourself, or you could just believe me.
That's a good one.
So just believe us. Dinosaurs are real.
Pandas are real. Pandas are dogs.
That is a thing in China, I guess. Anyway, so anxious attachment style. So it describes the bond between people. So since anxiously attached individuals fear abandonment and rejection, they may employ people pleasing through harmful self-sacrifice and risky conformity as a tool to maintain closeness. However, as we've discussed, people-pleasing behaviors usually lead to an insecure relationship, low satisfaction, and even more anxiety. So like you said, it's almost that loop that starts creating.
Well, and again, they will attract to them someone who is the opposite of that. So you see this push-pull happening.
Well, and like almost like the anxious person is overcompensating
for the avoidance behavior.
Another one, study examines the effectiveness of assertiveness training. So there you go. Your XYZ.
Look at me. I know what I'm talking about.
So assertiveness training in reducing people-pleasing behaviors among adults. Findings indicate participants who underwent the training reported significant decreases in approval seeking and increase in boundary setting behaviors.
I want to say something about that real quick.
Go for it.
You're still people-pleasing if you are being passive, being passive aggressive, right? Yeah. You're not people, but you're pleasing yourself at that point. You're that passive. You might think, well, I said it. Did you say it to them directly? Remember the rules,
right?
So those rules apply to you too. If you can do it yourself, you need to ask directly. You don't need to expect something in return from someone else, and you need to consider if that person doesn't have the bandwidth or is too stressed out or whatever. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, last one. So longitudinal study explores how establishing personal boundaries influences mental health. Everything we've talked about. Outcomes such as anxiety, depression, self-esteem. Results suggest that individuals who actively set boundaries experience improved psychological well-being and reduce people-pleasing tendencies over time. So again, there's a discomfort in doing this and making change. Change comes from discomfort.
Right. There's a reason why there's stoplights. There's a reason why there's yellow light, green lights, and red lights. Because if there was not, it would be chaos.
There would be chaos. Although I would
Create
appreciate some-
stoplights in your head.
Yes. So again, it's creating that discomfort. It's even like, this is what I tell clients. It's more uncomfortable it's going to be a shorter discomfort period when we just sit and ride through it, as opposed to trying to suppress it. Because when I'm trying to suppress it, it's going to last hours, weeks, months. As of what?
It'll be funny to say after this. Go ahead.
And so, or I could just sit with it and it'll last a couple minutes, maybe an hour, maybe a day. And so it happens a lot quicker, but it's just
You
going
ask
through that
directly.
process. Yeah. So now over time, I'm going to have less anxiety, less depression, more self-esteem. I'm improving how I feel by implementing these daily, weekly, and going through that discomfort rather than trying to push it off. And for most of you, you're between our ages or within our ages. Like at some point you've been doing this for so long, let's try something different.
Right. Adding to that, no is a complete sentence.
No
so you can say that. And also, here's where the lady talk comes in. Have you ever been like hooking up with a guy and he's just like playing around in an area and you're like, what is he doing?
I've
Like, that's
literally
my side of my thigh. What are you doing, dude? And if you just be like, hey, yo, my pleasure point is here. Yeah. Can you touch that instead of the inner? And then he does it. And you're like, perfect. Got what I needed. It's like that.
I'll tell you an opposite side where I did not discuss my boundary. I just kind of, So Christina did a good job at discussing her boundary there. And another time I was hooking up with this guy and I don't know, I was just like not into it, like, which was really disappointing because him and I had a nice, like, kind of chemistry going back and forth. But then it was like, I got, what is it called? Where the guy has sex with you and then he like clarity or whatever. Post nut clarity. It's like I got pre-nut clarity. Got it. And so like we weren't having sex, but we were just like starting to go there. And then all of a sudden, I was like, I'm not into this. So then I just like kind of got up and left.
That's a boundary.
I was like, well, like what? How do you tell a guy like, hey, no,
you should have.
But
yeah, I was going to school to be a sex therapist. I was all about, no, not there, here. Like, just give them a fucking roadmap. Give people a roadmap. One other thing that Amanda said, that's how this came up, is like, you'd be surprised how thankful people will be when you actually tell them what you want. Because if people really care about you, they don't want to be treating you or asking you to do things or whatever that looks like in a way that's hurtful to you. Yes. So also keep that in mind. And make sure you have orgasms. All right. Is that it?
Yeah, long story short, just make sure you have orgasms.
Yes.
And you can please yourself on those ones too.
That's true. That's true. All right. Well, if you like this information, we always post stuff like this on our social media. You'll find amazing new shorts on YouTube. Our social media page is Mindset of Matter Coaching. You can find Amanda at fitbyamanda.az. You can find our YouTube page at The Mindset of Matter. And we will connect you with all the things we talked about on our show notes below. So be on the lookout for that. That's a new thing we're doing, plus timestamps, so you don't have to sit through our bullshit. If you're interested in coaching with us, you'll also find Clarity Call link if you want to learn more about how our program will help you with this exact thing, on top of giving you sustainable, consistent habits in regards to health and nutrition and exercise and all of those things. So if you want to talk to us, Clarity Call is in the link below. And, at the end of the day, we just want you to, how do I want to say this one? Cut that, Ira. And at the end of the day, if you can look in the mirror and only please yourself. Nope, that's not what I want to say. What do I want to say here? This is a hard one.
I think you were going with that.
And we want you to remember that your reflection on this exact thing is incredibly important. And so we want to leave you with this last one thing
What you say in the mind.
you see in the mirror. Bye-bye.
Bye.